Welcome to the Just Heat Pumps podcast. I'm Aaron,
I'm Xerxes.
and we're going to continue the series on DIYing or having your heat pump installed by a professional and the pros and cons of each. This is the second video in the series, and on this one, we're calling it DIY or Not. Points, good and bad, about DIYing your own heat pump install. So let's get right into it. The first item on the list, and perhaps the biggest one on everyone's mind who's thinking about DIYing, is the cost, right?
Absolutely.
So, what do you think on this one?
This is a huge motivation, often the primary one for anyone considering installing a heat pump in their own house. And I think the main category of heat pump is usually a single, maybe a two-zone ductless system where you hang the heads on the walls, drill holes, connect the line sets to the outdoor condenser, which is an evaporator in winter, and then turn it on, right? It's just, it should be as easy in that, but it's there's quite a bit more going on. And so when you talk about potential savings, you're saving on the equipment, right? The equipment cost versus paying a pro installer to pay their labor rates, their overhead, vehicle fees, gas to get to and from. And so I think the dream for DIY installation is to have uh, a low cost, maybe budget equipment delivered to your house. You install it yourself, and at about sometimes 80% lower cost on the sticker price, 80, sometimes 90%,
Mhm.
depending on the equipment that you're looking at. And I think that is really a big motivation and why it might seem very attractive to DIY. And then, but there's quite a bit more that goes into the cost category if you're being fully honest and saying, okay, well, how many tools do I need to buy, right? And okay, wait, that tool is $800. And then this tool is 300. All of a sudden it stacks up to say two or three, sometimes $4,000 in tools if you're not already well outfitted with the basics in your home. And so there's tool costs. Sometimes you have some friends who may or may not have some tools available as well, which you can save on. And then in addition to the equipment cost, there's also the supporting supplies, the peripherals, the line set, the copper, the insulation, some mounting hardware, the stand, the electrical connections, the electrical circuitry. And so these things also definitely need to be factored in to your budget. And that adds, a couple more $1,000. So you might look at a 2,500 or $4,500 equipment cost for a single zone mini split and end up tallying up somewhere between 55 and 7,500 all in on a DIY project.
Yeah, and the thermostat and the heat kits and the Wi-Fi modules and the all the little screws you need, and it can go on and on. And then cost is also not just monetary. I kind of touched on it in the first video. And to your story of overhearing the table discussion out at dinner, right? Where, oh, this is online for $2,500. They're quoting me 11,000, or in our case, the equipment's higher here in Colorado and Denver, because we're doing 4 or 5 ton whole home ducted systems. You need ductwork modifications. You need all the tools for cutting metal,
Mm,
and the safety clips so you don't slice yourself. I mean, it's like that. In our first project together, when we were partnering up with this company, we did a rental house that I have here in Denver, and super stressful DIYing that. It took about 4 or 5 days. Granted, it was our first one, but it just took that long. It was full time for 4 to 5 days just to do it right. Luckily, nothing's happened to it. It's working great. The tenants are happy. But as a non technical person or non installer myself, I was just like floored by the amount of equipment and all that that goes into it. However, all of that is still much less expensive if you can DIY, if you're comfortable with it, if you're proficient in the tools, you'll still save a lot. And I'll touch on running a company in later this video or the next one as well.
Also in the savings category, uh, when you're saving money, you're actually spending time. And this is time learning new tools, time learning the manual, and time doing the install. Significant amount of time. I said that first install that I had done was 5 days, and that was with some experience, with a little bit of experience on the repair side. And so that I think that's kind of a factor. How many days are you willing to spend in this? And I think what motivates that is a different topic, but it's kind of it's the DIY spirit, where you've got this, I'm making my home better on my own terms. This is my house, and I'm working on it, and I do that a lot in my home. I love working on 90% of anything that I can do, but if there's if there's something that's going to take me a week or more, I just don't have that ability anymore. I don't have the flexibility in the schedule, and so there's some commitment there. How many, if you can't get it done in one weekend, are you willing to spend 2 weekends or maybe three? And then if it doesn't boot up, then it's another weight in the category there, that what you're willing to commit to on a DIY project. And in that DIY spirit, there's a sense of ownership that, you own that project, you completed that project, and that home improvement journey was done, on your own back, which is a real sense of accomplishment.
Yeah, absolutely. And I visit the home for other reasons, just to check in on the property. That first one that I mentioned, and you look at it, you're like, wow, that's cool. Like we did that. That was the first one. I mean, we're doing heat pump installs every week now. I'm not on the install team like you are managing that crew. But yeah, there is certainly a sense of accomplishment, and it's like, wow, you could do it because it's a bit of everything. If you want to learn, this is a great project to do it. Plumbing, electrical, mechanical. Drywall, running the copper lines through the joists or the refrigeration lines. There's just about every section or theme of DIY you could imagine with this one.
Another aspect of the DIY project is the homeowner's ability to control the timing of the project, when it starts, if you need to pause it, when it should end, and then also controlling who comes and goes inside and out of your house, right? I interviewed one potential customer recently, and he said, "Look, I don't want anyone in my house." And I thought, okay, this will be challenging because we will be in your house for some days here doing this massive project that you have scoped out. And he had done all of his own electrical DIY. And he said there was some circuits where he was like, don't look at that circuit. And it goes out to some crazy welding machine that's not permitted. And I was like, I don't want to get hurt in your house here, man. And that was interesting. And so he wanted to do everything except obtain that specific equipment and commission it. And it was going to be something that we were not able to warranty and really feel confident that it would run well. So he's doing that fully on his own in that sense. But that was an interesting anecdote that I was like, okay, yes, I get it. You know, sometimes you don't want strangers in your house, and that's another reason to DIY.
Sure. And actually, that comes up a lot, the point where you can DIY some stuff, but if you watch a lot of YouTube videos like I did when I was first starting this and trying to get more comfortable. And you'll see in a lot of comments and videos that often the homeowners and for listeners, just so you're aware, like check it out because you'll be comfortable DIYing and putting the equipment in place and doing some stuff up to the point of commissioning, which is vacuuming, right? Measuring refrigerant charges, and trying to do that correctly. And then it seems like in the comments in a lot of videos and on Reddit and everything, there is a stopping point, and it usually says something like, I had to call
Mhm.
somebody. I just could not do kind of the final commissioning step myself or wasn't comfortable with it. So, really, if you're looking at doing this yourself, really dig into that part of it and know what that looks like because you may be hitting a snag, which means that you may not have air conditioning, heating, or cooling in your house. And we don't want that surprise
Oh yeah.
to happen to you. And don't, if DIYing this for your first time or two takes 3 to 5 days, we don't want this to go to 8 to 10 days waiting for somebody to come out, which is now a pro and con of the professional versus DIY. You can do this on your own time unless you hit a snag where you need somebody else anyway. And now you've just doubled the whole timeline or quadrupled the whole timeline of this install.
Yeah, it may make sense to, if you have the ability to plan the project, and I recommend that as a DIY project planning it plan for a
Hmm.
shoulder season where you have mild temperatures and you're not fighting against, excessive heat or very cold temperatures. That's an ideal kind of working environment where you're not pressured to race it or to cut corners or to speed along or skip any steps. Yeah, shoulder season. And Aaron, I think I had to just bring up one, real kind of headline project or one headline topic for, that motivates DIY, and that's folks who just love learning new things. And, I am definitely in that category. I just, lifelong learner. Hey, new technology, old technology, history, anything. I love learning about it. And so the heat pump is this kind of miraculous playground of just all these great technical, societal, environmental, uh, home, uh, building science, things that you just get to dive into and learn so much about. And I think that for me definitely was a motivator because I love working on technologies that are benefiting the community, helping clean up air quality. And so, of course, I'm going to love learning about how they work and how to install them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And the learning is endless here. We've done other videos and we will in the future about the building science of it and sizing this correctly. I've done air sealing and net zero home renovations myself, and but what I've lived in a home with an oversized AC system in Florida, and it would just short cycle on and off. And I had to, before I was doing heat pumps, I was dangerous, like renovating homes. Have been in sustainability for a long time. Have done different facets of it, but I had the AC guy out, every 6 months because the circuit boards were frying and uh, different things were failing in the system. And it was an 1,100 square foot home with a 3-ton AC system. And you can go by the old rules of thumb. And the house was so leaky. As an amateur sort of energy auditor myself at the time, you could see the gaps. The soil had created gaps between all the walls and floors. So, bugs were getting in. This is when I first bought it. There were huge, like 1 to 2 inch gaps around the whole floor baseboard, and it was just letting air in from underneath. So ultra leaky home, and you could just see that the solution for the previous homeowner or an HVAC company went in there and said, "Oh, your
Hmm.
system's too small. You need to put a bigger system in here because it wasn't keeping up, right?" And then now the thing's failing all the time because it's shutting on and off every 5 minutes, and you could just start to see, these, and that was a professional install, right? A DIYer could probably have
Mm.
done it better if they really dug into sizing and figuring out that using some caulk and spray foam would have been the solution, not a whole new system. So anyway, you could go down these rabbit holes of not just HVAC or heat pumps, but the whole building envelope, the building science, the thermal dynamics, the air leakage, and then factoring in the weather and the behavior and what internal factors do you have? How many people are in there? What do you set the thermostat? So you could go on, and it is a bottomless well of learning and knowledge you can get into if you like.
And
If you like.
with that, you can customize a system however you want. If you're DIY
Mm-hmm.
this, if you when you DIY a project, you are definitely the last word in that. And whoever wants to tell you what should be done, like in your Florida home, that system should be just bigger, it'll be fine. Turns out it was, and it was oversized and short cycled, and
Mm-hmm.
then but that's ah, we could take that so many ways, really just having a building scientist come in and say, hey, you have air leakage, fix that, and you can have an air conditioner that's half the size. You'll be fine. And I mean, that's just gold right there. $20 worth of caulk and spray foam and solved all your issues. It's just amazing.
For sure.
Let's touch on the idea of permits, insurance, and liability. And this one in particular, when we talk with some contractors, they offer permitting as an option. Now, we do it every time, but you can see how you can save a few $100s on permitting, but there's risks in not having permitted work.
And when you mentioned insurance, because and this could be debated, totally depends on your home, neighborhood, and company, and everything like that. But for unpermitted work, an insurance company could have a good reason to deny you if something happens. I mean, I just heard the other day about a big house up in Steamboat Springs here in Colorado being fully burnt down after they brazed some copper, soldered copper. It was still hot. They left the site, home burned down. And if that's unpermitted and things like that, you have a real uphill battle, most likely. Every situation is different. This will seem definitely like a pro for getting a professional install, which we'll jump into on the next video. But you should be aware. Maybe you can do it with a
Yes.
homeowner's permit and do it yourself and save some money with that. You got to call up. Usually, the building departments are very friendly. They're very helpful when you're just trying to do the right thing. It's good for, let's say, if you want to sell your home and they're looking up permits, what the real estate agents and the potential buyers are looking up what projects have been done. And you can say you've got a new AC and they'll go on in the property records and be like, I don't see anything here for that. And now they know it's unpermitted and things like that. So maybe go for a homeowner's permit. They're usually not that expensive for the relative benefit, I would say, to go through this step. So it's not, and I've done it before. I've renovated homes, and you're intimidated of the permit process and getting on the radar with the city and all this kind of stuff. But once you go through it, you find out everyone's usually pretty friendly and will help you out. And it's beneficial, even if it's like a couple $100 or something like that. So, but yeah, I think bringing up the permit or not could be a whole other video probably, but it is true that they are expensive, and not just in cost, but in the company's time, like our time, to file for the permits and be there on the inspections and handle anything that comes up with that. And there's a good bit of administration with all that too. So
A nice thing for the permit for a DIY project is the inspection. When the inspector comes and points to a couple of things, gives you some tips, let's if you failed, it's usually a good reason, hey, you should fix that. It's not safe, or it's going to cause condensation problems. They also have courtesy inspections where you can ask for a courtesy inspection. They'll come out and check on your work kind of mid-project. That's a really nice thing to have done too, if your city offers that.
Sure, sure. And often they're looking at drainage in the water. And I've done it both in Florida and here in Colorado. And usually you can see their eyes go right to the drain, the condensate drain. And it's a big deal if it's in the attic. And I mean, it happened to me. This is more of a maintenance issue in Florida, but I had the air handler in the garage, above the garage ceiling, in the attic in Florida, and the condensate drain got backed up. It just mildew and things clogged, moss or whatever was growing in there clogged it, and all of a sudden the drywall fell through, it got
Yeah.
soaked because all the water has to go somewhere. And I had a $400 drywall repair and a super wet floor in the garage, and I was just like, what the heck? Did this, but like drainage is a big deal, whether you DIY or have it installed. But yeah, just somebody to watch and watch your work, because burned down houses and flooded homes are not a fun thing to deal with, and saving even two, three, $5,000 or more, 10,000, sometimes it's not worth it to save. They call it tripping over dollars to save pennies, or whatever that phrase is. That is a version of that when it's your primary residence, and usually so much of your effort and equity and a home life is wrapped up in this one property.
Yeah. And just to just balance it all out, if you're prepared, if you've got maybe some support and you're doing everything right, it can go really well. So,
Absolutely,
yeah.
and you'll save a lot of money.
Yeah, potentially.
Potentially, that's right. If
Yeah.
it goes well. Great. All right. Well, on the next video in this series, we're going to flip our mindset a little bit and speak to the mostly pros and cons though, of having your heat pump professionally installed by a company who does this day in and day out, which we do in Denver here.
Thanks, Aaron.
And so we'll give you that perspective. And yeah, we'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening.